the Ohio State Reformatory. Standing as a testament to a criminal justice system that once dreamed of inmate rehabilitation, this beautiful structure is filled with both residual and intelligent spirits. The deaths and the inhumane treatment of the inmates who once called the reformatory home continue to haunt the grounds to this day, screaming from beyond to have their stories told. So no one will forget the horrors that took place behind these walls. Today we visit some of those stories as we take a look at the history and haunts of the Ohio State Reformatory. We are inviting you to come along. So if you're curious, let's take a walk through history. On September 17, 1896, the Ohio State Reformatory officially opened its doors. Its first residents were 150 low-risk inmates transferred from the overcrowded Ohio Penitentiary in Columbus. Construction of the reformatory was still incomplete, and there were gaps in the perimeter walls. So officials decided to have the new inmates help finish constructing the prison's 25-foot outer wall and the sewer system. Finally, by 1910, the reformatory was completed, standing as a symbol of hope that inmates could be rehabilitated and return to society to lead productive, fulfilling lives. The complex was divided into sections. The front of the reformatory, reminiscent of a 16th century French castle, housed the administrative offices and the warden's quarters. The prison was connected by a central hub and functioned as a self-contained world. Inmates had access to a kitchen, dining area, library, hospital, and even a barber shop. The imposing east and west cell blocks were separated by a guardroom. Cells didn't face each other, but instead lined a central corridor for maximum efficiency and control over the inmate population. The east cell block, with a staggering 600 cells stacked across 6 tiers, still holds the distinction as the world's largest freestanding steel cell block. With the Ohio State Reformatory operational, other prisons sent their non-violent first-time offenders to the facility, but continued overcrowding at those prisons soon led to the inclusion of borderline cases to the reformatory. By 1930, the reformatory was overcrowded with hardened criminals. Cells meant for 1 or 2 inmates now held 4 or more, putting an end to the dream of individualized rehabilitation. These cramped conditions at the reformatory led to increased violence, with tempers flaring over minor disputes, and a perceived lax in security fueling escape attempts. In a chilling November 1926 incident, a former inmate returned to aid his ex-cellmate's escape, resulting in Officer Urban Wilford's murder, the reformatory's first officer fatality. The former inmate was captured 2 months later and sentenced to death, meeting his end in this electric chair when it was used at the Ohio Penitentiary in Columbus. Severe overcrowding continued, and by 1980 the courts finally ruled in favor of the inmates who had filed a class action lawsuit against the reformatory for inhumane conditions. The reformatory was ordered to transfer out all of its prisoners and cease operations. Finally, in 1990, the last prisoner was transferred out of the obsolete facility, and the reformatory closed its doors. In 1994, The Shawshank Redemption was filmed at the abandoned Reformatory, reviving public interest in the facility. The following year, the Ohio State Reformatory Preservation Society formed to save the site from the wrecking ball, leading to renovations and reopening for tours and ghost hunts. There are some who say the allure of the Ohio State Reformatory is so strong that people can't bring themselves to leave, even in death. Visitors now explore the Gothic halls, with some reporting eerie encounters, and many believe the Reformatory is indeed haunted. Our first ghost story is the sad tale of Superintendent Arthur Glatke and his wife Helen. Arthur, who took charge of the Reformatory in 1935, lived on site with Helen, as wardens typically did at the time. Tragedy struck on November 5, 1950. Helen was dressing to go to Sunday Mass. She pulled her jewelry box out of the closet, and Arthur's .32 caliber weapon came with it, hitting the floor and discharging. The shot pierced Helen's lung. She was rushed to the hospital, where surgery was successful, but infection quickly took hold and she passed 2 days later of pneumonia. Arthur was devastated. The love of his life was gone. His heart was heavy as the halls of the Reformatory now felt empty. Arthur continued his duties until he suffered a fatal heart attack in his warden's office 9 years later. Even in death, the Glatkes seemed bound to the Reformatory. Visitors report hearing spectral conversations and disembodied footsteps throughout the administration building. Helen's spirit is said to haunt the White Room, her former quarters, where the scent of roses and sudden cold spots are frequently reported, while Arthur's spirit is commonly seen wandering the halls, searching for his lost love. Their tragic story and enduring presence may suggest a love and loss forever intertwined in this haunted Reformatory's history. Next, there's the chair room. Unassuming at first, just a bare, windowless space with a single chair facing the door. The room and the chair give off an uneasy feeling to those who enter the space. It's said that a spirit, for reasons beyond understanding, guards the chair and doesn't like anyone sitting on it or moving it around the room. One story has a visitor taunting the spirit while sitting on the chair, only to leave the room with unexplained scratches on his neck and back. However, this is a rare instance of reported physical contact within the Reformatory. This chair is often heard scraping around the floor when no one is in the room, as if the chair has come to life and is moving on its own. It could be that the spirit trapped in the room is pulling the chair back into its rightful position after a visitor has moved it. There are even reports of Reformatory staff moving the chair before they leave the building at night, only to find it return to its rightful spot when they arrive the next morning. The oppressive atmosphere and potential malevolent encounters solidify the chair room's place as one of the Reformatory's most unsettling locations. At the Ohio State Reformatory, even beauty can be unsettling. The Reformatory's chapel, with its soaring architecture, should inspire peace. But we soon found out peace is mostly unattainable at this historic complex. The chapel is one of the most paranormally active areas in the Reformatory and is widely considered to be the central hub for the prison's hauntings. Visitors report fleeting glimpses of entities that duck behind the chapel pillars and a chilling sensation of unseen eyes watching them, even in broad daylight. This palpable unease, a stark contrast to the usual serenity found in religious spaces, leaves many desperate to escape this grand space. Randy and I both experienced something odd in the chapel. Nausea so unbearable that we weren't certain we could continue the tour. As soon as we exited the chapel into the cell blocks, however, the ill feeling immediately vanished. Neither one of us had known that the other was experiencing this until after we finished the tour. Could it be that we were both targeted by an unseen entity trying to grab our attention or make us leave? The real chills come from the infamous cell blocks, especially if you're afraid of heights. When exiting the chapel, you empty out onto the top floor of the east cell block, a magnificent sight that can take your breath away. Acrophobia aside, the two wings of cramped cages, once packed with humanity, exude a palpable sense of despair, as if decades of pain and violence are reaching out from the past, eager to share their suffering. Even skeptics report eerie experiences in the cell blocks. Disembodied voices calling out from the darkened cells, footsteps echoing from the floors above, and rattling chains replaying a shackled inmate's long walk to his cell reverberate off the cell block's stone walls. Personal encounters when you enter one of the cells involves taps on the shoulder, touches on the face, and even hair stroking. But the most notorious story from the cell block area centers around cell 13. Cell 13 holds a particularly dark chapter in the Reformatory's history, when a young inmate met a horrific end within its walls. Denied parole at the age of 22, James Lockhart's despair turned into a desperate act of self-destruction. Unable to cope with the unbearable reality of spending the rest of his life in the Reformatory, Lockhart entered Cell 13 alone, closed the door behind him, pulled out a can of turpentine he had smuggled from the prison workshop, and poured its contents over his head. A single match ignited a horrifying inferno. Witnesses were left helpless as Lockhart's screams filled the air, and the stench of burning flesh overwhelmed the cell block. Even today, visitors claim to hear the echoes of those screams within the cell block. Some report an unsettling warmth emanating from the very cell where Lockhart took his life. A chilling reminder of the torment that lingers within these walls. In the Reformatory's basement exists one of the most paranormally active areas of the facility, solitary confinement, also known as the Hole. Designed to break even the strongest wills, these cramped, windowless cells deprived inmates of natural light and drove many to madness. Visitors to the hole often experienced nausea, chills, and a suffocating dread, echoing the torment of past inmates. It's no wonder this grim space seems to attract its own darkness. In 1957, a prison riot resulted in an estimated 120 prisoners serving 30-day sentences in the hole, which was only equipped with 20 cells. 6 inmates crammed into this small cell for 30 days would be a torture that is incomprehensible. But there is another tale from an incident here in the hole that is bone-chilling. Stories tell of a guard forcing 2 inmates who hated one another, one of which was only 14 years old, into the cell. When the guard returned, only one of the inmates emerged alive. The 14-year-old was beaten to death by his adversary. Visitors to the Reformatory have heard shouting and pleading coming from the hole and have caught glimpses of the youth's shadow, a spectral figure seeking escape. A darker presence believed to be the boy's killer, exuding a malevolent energy, has also been seen and helps amplify the sense of unease. This oppressive darkness casts a foreboding atmosphere, leaving visitors to ponder the true secrets buried within these walls. Once a symbol of a harsh past, the Ohio State Reformatory now stands as a chilling reminder of history and a place synonymous with despair and suffering. Whether the stories that haunt its halls are whispers of the paranormal or echoes of a brutal past, one thing remains undeniable. Within these walls, countless lives were permanently altered. Perhaps the true haunting of the Ohio State Reformatory may not reside in the shadows, but in the lessons we choose to learn from its darkness. Thank you for watching, folks. We'll see you next time as we explore more curious history. Take care.